Mark Rogers TV with more on the BCS championship game. Number 1, Notre Dame. Number 2, Alabama. Let's talk Alabama defense. This unit was so dominant in 2011, one of the great defensive showings in recent college football history. They led the nation in scoring defense and total defense. Of course, the one loss was at home against LSU, and they gave up just 2 field goals in regulation. Then they avenged that loss in the championship game in New Orleans, shutting out LSU 21-0. And of course, this LSU offense wasn't great, and they had issues at quarterback with Jordan Jefferson. But so much speed and athleticism and talent on that LSU offense. And for Bama to shut them out and give up just 92 total yards, let that sink in. Okay, 6 players were drafted off that defense, 4 in the top 35. Another number to let sink in. 4 of the top 35 players in the country coming off the Alabama defense to the NFL draft. Okay, so we expected a drop-off in performance for the Alabama defense. Did we get it? Well, yes and no. This defense was still number 2 in the country to Notre Dame in scoring defense, led the nation in rushing defense, and of course their performance was stellar most of the time. In 9 of the 12 games, they were dominant. The 3 times that Alabama was hurt on defense was because of stellar quarterback play. That's the common denominator. Let's look at the games. Against LSU, even though the Tide pulled it out with McCarron leading the touchdown drive late at Baton Rouge, of course, Zach Mettenberger, not a great quarterback, didn't have a great season, but he saved his best for the second half against Alabama. He hit on 24 of 35 for 298. Alabama could not turn him over, and he threw a touchdown pass. So 24 of 35 for 298. Zach Mettenberger was on his game. Of course, the classic example was Johnny Manziel at Tuscaloosa in the upset of Alabama 29-24. Manziel hit on 24 of 31 for 253, plus he brought that additional element, the running game. They couldn't stop him in the lanes. He found the lanes. He hurt the Tide on the ground. 18 carries for 92 yards. And then finally in the SEC championship game, Aaron Murray for Georgia wasn't extremely accurate, but he hit on big plays. 18 of 33 for 265. And of course, he led that final drive that could have led Georgia to the championship game. So if Georgia gets 4 more yards or has a little bit more time on the clock, then we're talking about the Tide defense giving up 35 points and wilting in the clutch and giving up that final drive to lose the SEC championship and lose a shot at the national championship. But as it stands, the Tide pulled through, and here are the stars that we need to look at tonight. On defense for Alabama, we've got 2 all-SEC first-team performers in linebacker C.J. Mosely and cornerback D. Milner. Mosely led the team in total tackles with 99, and Milner had 20 passes defensed. Then you've got cornerback Robert Lester. He's a second-team all-SEC performer. Also, defensive back Vinny Sunseri. He stands out because this guy makes plays. He only had 6 starts, but he had 6 tackles for loss. He's around the football, 4th on the team in tackles. Then you've got linebacker Adrian Hubbard. Hubbard doesn't get a whole lot of pump, but he led the team in total tackles for loss with 10 and also had 6 sacks. But it really all starts with the nose guard, Jesse Williams. Jesse Williams is the anchor of this 3-4 defense for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and he's got to be active and get into the backfield. And speaking of which, that's the huge difference between the 2011 unit and 2012. The tackles for loss, one of the most impressive figures in the history of college football defensively. Alabama got into the backfield and had tackles for loss in almost 14% of the plays last season. Huge drop-off this year. Not a big pass rush, not game-changing plays in the backfield. It's a stout defense, it's a strong defense, but they don't make game-changing plays like the 2011 unit. Okay, they go up against Notre Dame quarterback, redshirt freshman Everett Golson. Everett Golson, certainly a different quarterback right now than what he was early in the season. He was afraid to make plays in the passing game, and Brian Kelly was afraid to let him make plays. Now we've got a different scenario for Everett Golson late in the season. He's a much more precision passer, much more confident and poised. Still at 58% completion, and that really didn't go up a whole lot. It did to a certain extent late in the season Everett Golson needs to be a much more precision passer, more accurate. He needs to play the game of his life tonight. He needs to be lights out in the passing game for Notre Dame to have a chance against Alabama. He does bring the dual threat capacity to the Notre Dame defense, something that, of course, Alabama struggled against Johnny Manziel in particular. Golson is speedy, he's fast, but he's no Johnny Manziel. He doesn't have that type of quickness and speed, nor does he have that type of feel to find the open lane and take off. Manziel has almost a sixth sense about when to throw, when to take off. It's amazing to watch, and we saw it a few days ago at the Cotton Bowl. Golson, not to that level. He's much improved, but he's got to play the game of his life against this Alabama defense because his counterpart, A.J. McCarron, unless something goes horribly wrong, we pretty much know what he brings to the table for Alabama. He's not a tremendous talent, but he is one of the best in the country, second in passer rating. Of course, he stepped up big against LSU in the championship game last year, 26 touchdowns, 3 picks this season, so we don't expect him to make mistakes. Golson needs to step up big against Alabama. Our pick on this game is just 4 hours away. Alabama 24, Notre Dame 17. Should be a good game, not a great one, as the Tide wins it by a touchdown. Need to hear from you now. Let's hear your pick, your analysis, here on Mark Rogers TV.